Have you ever wondered how is it that some people could claim to be against animal cruelty, but then eat meat? If you were to ask 10 random people if they're against animal cruelty, there's a good solid chance that they'll all say yes. Some might be even passionate in their feelings about being against animal cruelty, yet chances are they all eat meat. You might be lucky if you get a vegan out of that group. If you haven't seen my last video, go check it out before you watch this. I interviewed a gentleman who's a professor at MIT, and I asked him if he was against animal cruelty, and he said yes. I then asked him if he would help an animal in need, and he said yes. But then when I asked him if he eats meat, you'd think he would say no, but he said yes. Where's all the help for all the animals being killed that this gentleman is eating? His entire argument was filled with contradictions. Now, do I think this guy is bad? Absolutely not. I think he's a good guy. You know, if I was saying he was bad, then guess what? I'm also saying that some of my family members are bad, my friends are bad, my neighbors are bad, my colleagues are bad, and these are all great people. However, there is one thing that all these people are facing, and that is something called cognitive dissonance. See, cognitive dissonance is a term that was coined in the 1950s by psychologists to describe the mental discomfort someone faces by holding two or more contradictory beliefs, by holding two or more conflicting cognitions. In other words, your beliefs don't match with your behavior. What you believe in is not aligned with what you're doing. And loving animals and eating them too is a prime example of cognitive dissonance. And this specific conflict is known as the meat paradox. And unfortunately, our entire society is trapped in this paradox. On one hand, we kill billions of animals intentionally. And on the other, if someone hurts a dog, guess what? They're going to jail. Now, for people to rid themselves of this mental suffering, they play cognitive tricks in order to ease that tension. And there's a couple of ways they can do this. I'm going to explain 4 of them. Now, the first way to reduce cognitive dissonance is the most effective way, and that is to completely change your behavior. If you love animals, you go vegan. The least you can do is stop eating them, period. Just by existing, you're going to create some type of suffering. I can go outside right now and I can step on an ant by accident. But there's a difference between unintentional killing and intentional killing. And just because you're vegan doesn't mean you're on the same level as every other vegan. Right? There's vegans out there that don't eat animal products, but they're buying soaps, shampoos, and a bunch of other shit that might contribute to the deaths of millions of animals out there. And they don't even know. Right? There's shit that I'm doing that I might not even know. But the point is to continue to educate yourself and do your homework so that when you're living your life, you create the least amount of pain as possible. And if you love animals, that's the least you can do. So now the second way of reducing this mental suffering of cognitive dissonance is to justify your behavior by changing the conflicting cognition. So what does that mean? That means telling yourself that, well, I'm not the one killing the animals, the guy in the slaughterhouse is. Or how else am I going to get my nutrients, my vitamins, my minerals, my protein, my fatty acids? Or this one, plants feel pain. I get that all the time. Plants feel pain, so, that gives me a justification means of, inflicting pain on animals. See, this is what people tell themselves in order to feel better about eating animals. And it's been proven time and time again that these are all invalid arguments. But yet people still convince themselves that it's okay. But deep down inside, they know they're wrong. Now, the third way of reducing cognitive dissonance is to justify your behavior by adding a new cognition. So what does this mean? This means I can volunteer for an animal rights organization, and that way I tilt the scales in my favor of being a true animal lover. Or I can become an activist and stand up against the Yulin Dog Meat Festival so I can save hundreds of dogs. But when it's time to go home and it's time to have dinner, I'm having steak. So as you can see, these are things people do to make themselves feel better, but they're still contributing to the problem. Now, the fourth and last way to reduce cognitive dissonance is to completely reject and deny any information that goes against your existing beliefs. And unfortunately, the majority of this world falls in that category. the majority of this world will go with either options 2, 3, and most definitely 4. People rarely ever think about where meat comes from or the process it takes to get on their plates. The living qualities of these animals from which they're extracted. Completely forgetting and ignoring the chain of meat production allows those to mentally separate meat from animals. So it can allow them to eat beef and pork without ever having to think about cows and pigs. There's been multiple studies on this. They found that people increased empathy when roasting pigs with the head still attached than if it was beheaded. They also found that replacing words like beef and pork on the menu with cows and pigs increased empathy and disgust, which both increased willingness to purchase plant-based options and decreased the willingness to purchase meat. And unfortunately, there's so much cultural socialization mechanisms out there to help promote cognitive dissonance. Things like media, which includes TV, advertisements, radio, newspapers, magazines, articles online, studies that have been probably funded by the meat, dairy, and egg industries, culture, religion, all these things help promote cognitive dissonance. So the question remains, how can we get people to choose option 1 and not go with option 2, 3, and 4? And the answer is, there is none. There is no definitive answer. The most vegans can do, the most activists can do, the most I can do is to show you guys that option 1 is possible. So for those of you at home who are watching this video who eat animal products, if I came off too strong in this video, I apologize. But I'm just keeping it real. I'm just keeping it real just as I hope someone else would keep it real for me if I was showing more inconsistencies. But I will tell you one thing. If you love animals, there's no reason you should be eating them. That's the least you can do, right? Going with option 2, 3, and 4, the cognitive dissonance that's going to be experienced is going to be so great that eventually the only way you're going to find peace and harmony inside you is by going with option 1. And that is by completely changing your behavior and going vegan.